Hi, everyone, and welcome to episode 5 of A Very Queer Book Club. I'm super excited this week to be sitting down with a music educator to chat about Love Creekwood. And it's also a dear friend from college, so there's lots of interesting discussions to be had. If you've not purchased your copy of the book, you can still do that by following the link in the description below to purchase it from Karis Books and More. And if you missed it, the book of the month for August is You Should See Me in a Crown by Leah Johnson. So you can also find a link to purchase that book from Kids Inc. In the description below. So, without any further ado, this is our final discussion about Love Creekwood. So please enjoy this conversation with Zach. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining me. I am joined today by my friend from college. So I'm super excited. I'm here with Zach. Zach, will you please tell us a little bit about yourself?
My name is Zach. My pronouns are he, him, his. I am a music teacher at a private school in Westchester County, New York. And I teach middle school and high school, like vocal music, yeah.
Amazing. Cool. Well, let's just jump right on into it. What were your kind of initial thoughts on the book, and what did you think about it?
I really enjoyed it. It was kind of interesting because it really sort of took me back to those moments of transitioning from high school to college, and sort of those feelings of like really trying to maintain your connections with your high school friends while also, building this new life in college with all new people. So yeah, it was interesting it like really brought me back to that time.
Yeah, that's interesting because that was one thing I wanted to chat about. We met in college, actually, while working on a show about elementary school students. So I feel like we've really just kind of hit all of the the different grade levels. So are there any other thoughts you have on the depiction of kind of the transition to college? Because I think that is such an interesting thing to see in literature.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. It was a little different than my own personal experience, but I saw a lot of similarities. But I would say that it's pretty accurate depiction. Although I will say by like Thanksgiving of my freshman year, I probably was like not talking to my high school friends as much. Um, but yeah, it really was interesting because, like I said, you arrive in college and you're really struck with this weird feeling of you feel so devastated that your high school friends aren't with you, and in high school your friends are everything, right? um, so yeah, it was interesting.
Yeah. And so one thing we chatted about via email actually a little bit while we were trying to schedule this, you mentioned you're part of this new this diversity, equity, and inclusion committee at your school. I would love to hear a little bit more about that because that sounds fascinating.
Yeah, so it's a new committee, and the whole point is we're like working with the board of the school, and the school is in the process of rewriting their whole mission statement. So we're being a very active part of that to make sure that the school's mission statement really truthfully recognizes and what's the word that I'm looking for? Um, is representative of what our school is now versus what the school was 100 years ago when it was first formed. So that's a lot of it. It really, I think, started with people thinking of just diversity and inclusion just in terms of race. But through conversations, I think everyone sort of organically realized that there's so much more to equity and inclusion than just race. So it's been exciting to be a part of that, um, and I'm excited actually to see where it goes. We've only really had one meeting, so it's all still very very new.
Right. Well, and kind of off that, do you think that there is a way that books like this, or just queer representation in general, can be used in the classroom, or different ways to incorporate it?
Absolutely. The thing that I feel like most passionately about these days is that like representation really, really matters. And I've always felt strongly about that, but lately it, I don't know, I've really been very focused on that. Um, and so I think not only for queer students. I think that this type of literature should be available to all students, because I think it's so important for everyone just to see and hear stories about queer people that um, just don't paint them as typical stereotypes, and just really show them as people. Um, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and are there any moments specifically in the book that kind of stuck out to you that kind of had that representation that you think is so important? Whether it be, whether making people, queer people feel represented, or maybe that would help maybe straight students kind of understand?
Hmm. I I don't know. I really just feel like the format of the book being all like through email and just people sort of communicating in a very colloquial, very just simple way, like you would just normally talk to people. Um, I think it makes, for lack of a better word, it brings more humanity. Like it makes queer people seem like people, not just like,
Right.
again, like this stereotype of, this image that you might have in your head of what a queer person is and looks like.
Yeah. And I mean, and I'm sure it's something that you've kind of talked about maybe on this council, but what, beyond just kind of including these books in their classrooms or in curriculum, what do you think educators can do to kind of make sure their students are safe in their classrooms?
I think I think it's really a bunch of small things, and I think the most valuable thing is for a student to know that you listen to them and hear them, um, no matter what it may be, and just making those like personal connections with your students. I feel very fortunate because I work at a smaller private school, so my class sizes are significantly smaller than they were when I taught in a public school. So there is more opportunity to make those personal connections. Um, but I think it all starts there. And something that I actually talk a lot with other coworkers, um, it goes a long way, I think, just to, when you meet your new students, to share your pronouns, right? And that way they know that you are a person who is acknowledging that everyone doesn't use the pronouns that you might assume. And just from my sort of short experience doing that, I have noticed that with a handful of students, it really has made a big impact on them. And they might just come up to me after class and say, I these are my pronouns. I don't really want everyone to know, but just the fact that they feel comfortable to share that with anyone, I think is pretty amazing.
I remember seeing something go around. I forget, it was a teacher that had like a form they gave out at the beginning, and they're like, "What are your pronouns? Can I use them with your parents? Can I use them? And can I
Yes.
use them with other students?" And that was something that I thought was so amazing, even just beyond for trans and non-binary students, but just to normalize the use of pronouns overall.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that, normalizing it, that's the perfect word, because like I do use he, him pronouns that someone might assume. But I think, by doing that, you are normalizing it. Um, and I have not seen that form, so I need to
I'll
go
have to
find
find it.
it.
I'll send it to you.
I
But
think
yeah,
that's
like
amazing.
basically, because like if we as cis people agree that we're going to use our pronouns as well, then it's not weird if someone's like, "Oh, I use these pronouns." Then it's just everyone's talking about their pronouns.
Right. Yep. That's amazing.
Anyway, so what do you have any thoughts, or maybe words of encouragement for teachers or maybe students that might be facing backlash for wanting to include you know books like this in curriculum? Because I'm maybe not so much in a private school, because it sounds like with an equity council you are making effort, but like at public schools you might get a lot of backlash from principals, superintendents.
Yes, yes. I would really say, like, as difficult as it is, if you truly feel that that is important, which we agree it is, that you should fight for that, because, um, like I said, I think that representation is so important, and um, you know, kids might not have access to these things at home. They might not feel comfortable. Um, you know, depending on what their home situation is like. So I do think as teachers, we, you know, we can help to make those resources available to students. Um, yeah, and I mean, and sort of along these lines, you know, my husband and I, we just adopted 2 years ago a black son, right? And so
Oliver's the cutest baby.
he is the cutest, he's the sweetest, and yeah, he's great. um, but you know, as a parent, you get so excited, or at least I did. I get so excited about like sharing with him things that I loved as a child, and then um, you know, I start looking at books that I read as a kid, movies that I loved, and like 95% of the characters are white, right? And so, um, so I think, you know, again, like searching out other things where he can see that he is represented, even though he's only two, and it doesn't really make that much of a difference now. But I think that's so important, and on the same token, like I was saying earlier, I've been sending these books to my nephews that are they're white. I'm like, you need to know these stories too. So I feel that way too about queer students and non-queer students having access to that literature.
Yeah. Oh, and you mentioned, you know, books that you and TV shows that you kind of grew up watching. What were some of was there anything that you found growing up with that queer representation that you really loved, or you know, anything that you maybe doesn't have the representation but kind of helped you in any way growing up?
Yeah, I mean, I never really found a lot of things with like very strong queer representation. I mean, the only thing I remember from when I was growing up was like Queer as Folk, which I
Right.
really at the time had no business watching.
Same. None of us did. None
But
of us.
I did.
Right.
Yeah, but I mean, I really always gravitated to things that were like older. Like I really loved like The Wizard of Oz. I loved like older movie musicals that didn't really feel, you know, they're all like larger than life.
Right.
So I think looking back, it was very much sort of a tool of escapism, right? So like, um, yeah, and like I loved like old TV shows like Bewitched. I always loved Endora, and she's like basically a drag queen. But I think there was something about these really strong characters and these sort of larger than life things, and you have musical numbers and glitter and all this stuff that I was really drawn to that at a young age.
What's so interesting because basically every character and thing you just mentioned, you mentioned strong characters, but they were strong women.
They were.
I was
That's
just
right.
like, because I had the same exact experience. Like, you know, like all the divas, like, I mean, even like some of the newer ones, I like in college wrote a paper on Patti LuPone. Like, I mean, like,
Yes, you know how much I love Patti LuPone.
oh,
She is my all-time like I
fully.
idolize her.
But like
Um,
going back even farther, we had like Ethel Merman, and like we didn't have the queer icons that a lot of people have these nowadays, but those were them. And so I love that you said that.
yeah, and I think there's something about, you know, the fact that they were women in a very like cisgendered male dominant society, you know, everything. And the fact that they were strong, powerful, they like refused to be quiet. Um, so, you know, I always felt like I tried to gain strength from that as a kid. Like even if I was only like alone in my bedroom, you know, listening to Ethel Merman sing and like sort of lip syncing and like sort of trying on the feeling of feeling that strong and confident, you know, even if I didn't actually take that outside of my bedroom. Um, but you know, I think
Wasn't
that
that isn't that
was
just the
important.
queer '90s experience? I feel like
Yes.
that's just what the queer '90s, at least for my experiences too.
Yeah, yeah.
And so
Um,
then on the opposite side of that, what is it like now as an adult seeing all the actual, not to discredit any of that, but like
right.
actual queer representation? What is that like?
I think it's amazing. And I think that that sort of plays a big part in, you know, a lot of students that I've encountered who seem, I mean, at least on the outside, it seems like their experience is maybe a little less difficult than mine, you know, because there are queer characters that are, you know, that people know, and it doesn't have maybe the same sort of stigma to it. Um, and you know, I love seeing that, and I hope that it just continues to get even better.
Yeah. And are there any are any favorites outside of course the Simon verse, because we love the Simon verse?
Yes. Well, you know, I do also love your favorite. You encouraged me to read Red, White, and Royal Blue,
You mean the book I have sitting right next to
which I fell in love with it. It's like it's great.
me?
And
Currently rereading
again,
it right now, actually.
going back to, you know, I mentioned Queer as Folk earlier, and like that was sort of the only thing. And there's nothing about that that's really relatable to a teenager.
Right.
And so I think these stories that aren't just all like hypersexualized, are it's so important.
Yeah. Amazing. So just for fun, in Love Creekwood, who would you want to be best friends with?
You know, I think I'd be friends with all of them, honestly. But I think Leah, like I think a lot of my friends, I see a lot of my friends in that character.
Yeah.
So I think that would be the one I would choose.
And then who did you relate to the most?
Well, I've always kind of thought like maybe Simon, honestly, because there's something, you know, that's very quiet and a little nerdy and also a little like high strung and wound up. It's like honestly, I see I do see what I would have been if I was just a little more comfortable with myself when I was that age.
Um, and so I want to know if there's a young person watching this that is struggling to find maybe support, whether it be from teachers or from their family, what would your advice be as a queer educator to that young person?
I mean, I would just encourage them to keep going and trust that things will get better. I know that sometimes it feels like everything won't get better, and maybe everything won't get better, but I would like to believe that at least most of it will get better. Um, you know, it's especially when you're in high school, you're very much in a very insulated environment. You know, even if you're in a bigger town, you know, not a small town. But it can be very hard, I think, sometimes to find people that you can build a community with. And I do think that as you go to college and as you go into the real world, I do think it becomes easier to find that community and that support. Um, but you know, I'd also say like if your parents aren't supporting you, seek out maybe another adult who you know will, because I'm sure that if you look there are people there who care about you and will support you.
And they're probably mostly the arts teachers.
That's right.
Coming from an arts teacher, I'm sure you relate.
That's right.
And I want to know, just because we're in this weird, crazy time right now, where, you know, what have you been doing for the past couple of months, whether it be what you've been watching, what you've been reading, or what you've been interacting with to stay sane and stay happy and stay joyful, because it's been a little bit hard.
It is very hard. You know, like especially as an arts teacher, the thing that I love about my job is making music with people, and that involves people being physically together and breathing together and singing together, you know, and that's
All things we cannot do.
yeah, we can't do that. So I feel like all of the joy, or not all of it, but a lot of the things that I really enjoy about my job went away when we had to go to virtual education. So yeah, I've really just been like spending a lot of time with my husband and my son. And I've really, not that they weren't a priority before, but it feels more important now, like noticing how different it is to have this much time to be able to put more energy into spending time with them that's meaningful. It's something that I think I will carry over when the pandemic ends, and maybe not make myself so busy all the time and so worried about school and work.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's really been what I've been doing. You know,
Amazing.
kind of boring, but
Hey,
we have dance parties and we have fun.
That's amazing. Well, now you're like, I'm sure, craze because it's like, are you online versus, is it, because I don't know if you're online or not, but like everyone's trying to decide right now.
Yeah, so we don't really know. They have all these plans in place. As far as I know, they're planning to start school in person, but they're like, we don't know for how long.
Right.
Maybe we'll be there, and maybe the teachers will be there, and the students can join by webcam. It's like all these. Honestly try not to think about it too much because
That's fair.
it will be what it will be, and
Right. So are there any other just last thoughts that has anything been sitting with you on when thinking about Love Creekwood, or just the Simon verse in general? Because I don't know what other experiences you had having the Simon verse.
Well, honestly, my first exposure to it was the movie. I had never even heard of it, honestly, before I saw the movie, and I just remember seeing the movie and just being like a complete emotional wreck afterwards. Because again, it really does bring back. It just brings back very strong feelings, and it has a great way of bringing you back to like that time of, or for me, that time of my life, which wasn't necessarily even a very happy time, but there's something sort of nostalgic about it that it's just very touching.
Right, and we even get a little hint of musical theater.
That's right. That's right.
Well, amazing. Thank you so much for chatting with me. I want to know, if you had to sum up, this is the last question, how the book kind of made you feel in either a word or a sound, what would it be?
I think I just said this word actually, but I think nostalgia is really, I really did feel like I was really honestly taken back to like my freshman year of college.
Yeah.
Which was actually kind of an amazing experience to be taken back there.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate you sitting down to chat with me.
Of course, I loved it. It was so much fun.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Thank you so much for joining me today. I really hope you enjoyed these 5 discussions about Love Creekwood. Next week, we start talking about You Should See Me in a Crown by Leah Johnson. So again, you can find a link to purchase that book from Kids Inc. in the description below. Next week, I'll be chatting with Leah, the author, and there's lots of exciting things coming, and I cannot wait. So until then, have a fantastic week, and I will talk to y'all then. Bye.